Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talkin Movies. I'm your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today's review is brought to you by the letters V, U, and O because I get to be the very unpopular opinion on this one. Today we're going to be talking about Brian Henson's new movie, The Happytime Murders. When the puppet cast of an 80s children's TV show begin to get murdered one by one, a disgraced LAPD detective turned private eye puppet teams up with his old partner and takes on the case. I've talked about my initial thoughts about this movie before on my podcast, Get on the Mic. When I first heard about this movie, my hope for it would be that it would be similar to another movie that I love, a movie that takes things from my childhood and makes them a little more adult. That movie would be Who Framed Roger Rabbit. After seeing the trailer for the Happytime Murders, though, I had this horrible feeling that my hopes were about to be dashed. Now, critics are already ripping the stuffing out of this one. They're saying things like, this review is brought to you by the letter I, insipid, imbeciles, incomprehensible, insane. Things like The Happytime Murders is a one-joke movie minus one joke. And the most absurd review that I saw was, this is the single worst movie of all time. Let's slow down a little bit here. Hell, I was looking forward to using jokes like, this movie is brought to you by the letters F and U and the number 69 and things like that. But I don't get to use those jokes either in a good or a bad way of describing this movie. The Happytime Murders, at its worst, is just an uneven comedy, and at its best, a wasted opportunity. Look, I'm not going to defend The Happytime Murders by calling it a great movie or anything, but is it the worst movie of all time? Hell, is it even the worst movie of 2018? I'm going to say probably not. Kids, I sat through Insidious: The Last Key, 50 Shades Freed, Every Day, Truth or Dare, I Feel Pretty, Show Dogs, Action Point, Superfly, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, yeah, I said it, The Spy Who Dumped Me, Dog Days, Mile 22, freaking Slender Man, and Life of the Party, just to name the ones I can remember off the top of my head. That last one proves that The Happytime Murders isn't even the worst Melissa McCarthy movie this year. Again, this is not a great movie, but it's far from the worst of the year, let alone the worst of all time. So critics, just slow down a bit. Okay, no Sesame, all street. That's what the tagline for this movie is, and that's pretty much what it is. An R-rated, warped, Los Angeles-based version of Sesame Street. On my podcast, Get on the Mic, we even talked about how the Sesame Street Workshop even tried to sue the makers of this movie because of the tagline, the marketing, and hell, the entire movie possibly blurring the lines for viewers between the movie and Sesame Street. Now, they lost that lawsuit, but I have a feeling that they may try again now that the whole movie is out. There is no doubt what this movie was going for. Hell, the movie even uses a similar line to today's show is brought to you by the letter, and one character even says, what's the word on the street? The makers of this movie are lucky that they won the lawsuit, because I think if Sesame Street Workshop would have waited until the movie was out, they might not have lost their case. So, I want to talk about what works and what doesn't work in this movie, because unlike some other critics, I'm going to give you the truth. I'm not just going to say this movie's crap because everyone else is saying it's crap. So what works in this movie? I felt that this one was at its best when the puppets were commanding the screen time. I really like the character of Phil Phillips, our main puppet PI, voiced by Bill Beretta, longtime Muppeteer and voice actor. He's best known for playing Pepe the Prawn on The Muppets. Phillips is not only one of the two main characters of the movie, but he is also the story's narrator. He tells the story in the style of a hard-boiled detective film noir style. While scenes such as the silly string climax in the trailer feel out of character for Phillips, when he gets to act like the classic detective-type character, it really worked for me. He is by far my favorite character in the movie. Honestly, I would have rather had an entire movie about his character than what we got. I'll go so far as to say that I would have rather seen a movie that was all puppets and no humans, which leads us to the human characters. I'm not going to say that all the human characters were bad, because they weren't. Characters such as the police lieutenant played by The Office's Leslie David Baker, the douchey FBI agent played by Joel McHale, or the classic PI secretary Bubbles played by Maya Rudolph were kind of fun and funny. The biggest wildcard human character was also one of the main ones, Detective Connie Edwards played by Melissa McCarthy. I'll keep this simple. The movie is at its worst when Melissa McCarthy gets to be Melissa McCarthy comedy movie Melissa McCarthy, if you know what I mean. Thankfully, for enough of her screen time, she gets to calm the hell down and act like most of us know that she can, and not try to be the female second coming of Kevin James. We don't get the full-blown life of the party Melissa McCarthy all throughout this one, thankfully. One of the ways that this movie falters is that they try to say that humanity is in harmony, but only because they are racist towards puppets. They play with this storyline for a bit, and it does pop in and out of the story as a whole, but overall it doesn't really matter as much as the movie really wants it to. Another way that it falters is that tonally it's a bit too unbalanced. There are times where the weird and raunchy humor works, and there are times that it doesn't. I think when the movie treated the weird like it was the norm and didn't try to wink at the camera with its jokes is where it thrived. The same could be said for when juvenile humor is used as well. One thing that might bother people about this movie is that disgraced Elmo Muppeteer Kevin Clash worked on this movie. It wasn't just some minor part either. He played two of the main Happytime gang members, Bumbly Pants the Rabbit and Lyle the sports coach turned drug lord. I know that the charges of underage sexual abuse were dropped, but that was only because the judge upheld the statute of limitations. I used to be a big admirer of Kevin Clash's work, but I lost all respect for him after the situation. I know that he also denies the charges, but it's still difficult to want to support him, me not knowing the absolute truth of the matter. While I had an okay time at this movie and enjoyed many parts of it, I'm still finding it hard to recommend because I feel like my opinion will probably be in the minority. In that way, I'm kind of like one of these movies' puppets. I also feel like this movie was a pretty big misstep when it came to what it could have been. I think I would have rather seen a movie that was all puppets and more serious than funny. Now, I'm not saying that it would need to drop all of the weird, so to speak, but just treat that weird stuff as the puppet norm. A darker noir style all puppet detective story probably would have made for a better movie than what we got. Is it the worst movie ever? No. Is it even the worst movie of this year? Not really. Now, is the Happytime Murders a missed opportunity at something special? That would probably be a yes, which is too bad. I would like to see Henson Alternative take a crack at something like I mentioned, but still use the character of Phil Phillips again. I think that they deserve another shot. This is kind of a misstep, but if they go back to the drawing board and figure out what worked and what didn't, and give it another try, I think that they could come up with something really good. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel, like this video, and if you have anything to say about this movie, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Until next time, I'm your host, the Real Geno, Geno Reynolds. See you later.